Hello and welcome to Hops and Brews.
Today we're talking about gas, not farts.
For an open window on the crowded world, Max and Chris from Ups and Brew. Welcome to Ups and Brews. Yeah.
So yes, we're going to be talking about gas, now a very specific gas. As you know,
Yep.
there are two gases in general that are very important for beer.
Mm-hmm.
Oxygen and CO2. Oxygen mostly because you don't want it.
Yeah,
It's going to
exactly.
affect your beer in a negative way unless
don't
you're
wanna touch
aging.
that.
Yeah, unless you're aging and then you want the oxygen to purposely infect it to make it a little more sweet or whatever. But generally you don't. You want your CO2.
You
That's
want
going to be the
CO2.
gas that's going to be naturally produced in beer.
Yeah. Yep,
And also
yep,
the gas that's going to be artificially added in the serving of beer. Now, we're not talking about CO2 or oxygen, we're talking about a third one, which is nitro.
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen.
N2.
You've probably had beers with nitrogen in them or that was used to dispense the beer. It's something that's fairly common now.
Yeah, which, if I think right now, right off the bat, one beer that I'm pretty sure all of you guys already drank it
At least once.
is mostly nitro.
Mostly nitro?
Like, mostly. It's never 100% nitro.
Yes, of course. What do you mean? I thought you were going to name a beer.
Oh no, it's still secret. I won't name it. I want you to keep it
that's
like
pretty funny.
secret.
Yeah.
It's your thing. So the history starts off with
Okay, so, what do you mean it's mostly... Anyways, Guinness, naturally, the initial beer, the first ones to do it was Guinness. There's a reason why they have a patent on that little ball they have in the can. There's a reason why, when you think nitro, the first thing that should come to mind is Guinness.
Guinness.
Because they're the guys who actually came up with it, or at least came up with it in the beer world.
Yeah.
Nitrogen was already a thing. They just made it with beer, or added it to beer to make
Exactly.
something different.
Yeah.
So the story starts with Guinness. Mid 1900s, they were very big on trying to problem solve. They had a couple issues here and there, and they wanted to fix them. Now, the best way to do it usually is you ask your brewer. In this case, what they did is they went to get people who were not brewers who would see a different angle to a problem. In this case, they hired a guy named Michael Ash, which was a mathematician, so
Yeah.
not a brewer at all.
So what's the link between Max
Well, that's
and
the
beer?
thing, is which I think is incredibly creative of Guinness, is to try to use the experience of someone else that is not always in beer, so they'll see a different angle.
Yeah.
It's always if you have a problem, you have to look at it from different angles to try to fix it. Now, this guy, they hired him, he was 20 at the time, they trained him to be a brewer. Oh, we're gonna have to stop this right now,
And we'll
'cause
be
we're
back
flashing.
in a few seconds.
See, it's like a commercial.
Yeah. I hate that battery.
And we're back, so...
Crazy battery problems.
Always the battery. So, as I was saying, they hired this guy to have a different viewpoint, a different angle on it. They trimmed him to be a brewer, and then they stuck him to be in the sample room to try to improve the shelf life of Guinness. Now, this guy,
Yes.
he did like that project, but he liked something even better. Now, Guinness back in the day had a weird system to pour. Now, naturally, they didn't have the same keg technology we have today, so they had
It's
casks.
still kind of like a weird process.
It's still
to
a weird
pour.
process. If you order a Guinness at a restaurant, it's going to be double or triple the time of another beer. And they're pouring, and they stop, they pour again. There's a science and also a religion to pouring Guinness.
I think it's more religion at that point.
At that point, it's probably more religion because they technically fix the problems. Technically. It's a slow pour. It's interesting. Before I was into craft beer, I was a big fan of Guinness. I think that's the appeal of it.
You got it
It's
tattooed.
literally
You
tattooed
got it
on me.
tattooed,
It's literally
yeah.
tattooed on me. So anyways.
It's cool.
I mean,
Guinness is
I
truly
wasn't
like
the
a
craft back
great
then. It was
beer, yeah.
it's a good beer. So this guy was interested in the draft problem they had because they couldn't pour it. They had this system, this two cask system. So the first cask they called the high cask, and that one it was newer beer, it was a little fresher, it was a little more condensed, so it would foam a lot more. The second one was older beer, and they called it low. So what they would do is they would fill the paint with 3/4 low, and then top it up with the high. So they would have to use two casks. Now the other thing is that you've got different bartenders at different bars, and they would have all their own system to do it.
And their own way to do
Their own way to do it,
So like 1/3 lower.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Or
2/3
stop there, or
up,
continue, or everyone had their own system, which I mean, it wasn't that bad. People liked Guinness. They liked the taste. Basically, we're making an assemblage between two different casks,
Straight up at the bar.
straight up at the bar. So
That's
it was. It wasn't bad necessarily for the brand. It was actually very good, but it was a problem because you would have to have two casks all the time.
I guess
Now,
it becomes a problem once you grow
When
a bit
you-
more
exactly.
because you don't get the same quality control on every single beer that's being poured.
exactly. You've
And I
got
think
basically
that's-
different pour every time.
That's what Guinness decided to make it their own.
Yeah.
Kind of like fight to make the Guinness the same single pour every time.
Definitely. Well, that's
poured.
why Ash was working on the in the sample bar to try to improve the shelf life, because back then in Ireland they had the cask, they had the kegs, if you
Yep.
will, but they would export the bottles, so that's why they
Okay.
wanted more shelf life to be able to expand their brand. Now, Ash, passionate about this beer and passionate about this problem. Now, initially he knew what he had to do. It was Nitro. Nitro was the answer now, but how do you create something that has a nitro, the CO2, because as you've said earlier, it's only 70% CO2, 30%, 70% nitro,
Yeah.
30% CO2,
It's the
depending.
magic
magic
number.
kind of
so
ratio, yeah.
70-30 is the magic ratio. But I heard that most of like the draft systems
Mm-hmm.
that we know right now, they are not 100% CO2. They're balanced out with a little bit of nitro too.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's that way. And there's also just a little
Yeah, a little
quote,
parenthesis.
a few old bars in old towns that are still pushed through compressed air.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I heard
well,
this is just awful.
It's awful. It's not bad if you're going to get rid of the keg inside of a couple hours,
Yeah,
in like
but-
the same day as soon as you tap
Yeah.
it, but as soon as you have to keep it for a couple weeks or a couple days, no, it's no good.
It's crazy. Okay, perfect. End of the parentheses.
Yes. So, Ash started working on this passion project of his inside of Guinness, tried to fix the draft problem, which he did
Yep.
by adding nitro to the system, and he worked with keg suppliers to try to create a keg which basically had two sections, one section CO2, one section nitro, and would basically... The system I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
Very, very scientific or whatever. But initially, the only thing you need to know is that it was a two system keg which had CO2 and nitro. Nitro would be slowly pushed as it was poured. That's why, still to this day, it pours slow.
Oh,
Naturally, nitro.
that's next level stuff.
Yeah, it's next level. Now, nitro is seen in a lot more beers these days, and it does change the flavor. So some people still rave about the time that Guinness was a different flavor, although these days I think not as many people were alive then. But yeah, so that's basically the birth of nitro in beer.
It still got them to trademark that little
That little ball, yeah.
ball that still, again, is present in Guinness.
Mm-hmm.
But we have two nitros poured
Yes, we
strictly
did.
up from the United States. So the red one is from Ballast Point, so you've seen it in the intro, and the Nitro Classic Milk Stout from Left Hand. So these two bottles, like, they worked hard to create the perfect ratio to get this nitro beer into bottles.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no widgets in there.
Which, to me, I found weird, because
Yeah.
I guess Guinness, their bottles don't have widgets either.
Yeah, but it's not all Guinness that has the nitro thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's like
But I've had bottles
yeah.
of Guinness that had the nitro,
Yes,
but I
exactly.
guess, yeah, it's finding the
So-
magical ratio.
Everything comes into the pouring of the beer. So you
Yeah.
need to pour hard to get that nice cascading effect in your beer. If you don't, you won't get it. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll get a flat beer straight out of the bottle. You need to pour it in a glass. That's how it works. And that's why it says on the bottle of both of the beers that we have right here. But Guinness, they trademarked the ball, so
Mm-hmm.
no one can use the ball.
And there was another company who worked on, I think it was an octagon or a square or something to try to do the same thing. So
I know.
there's other ways around it. It just
There's
sucks
other-
that you can't
It
do
exists.
the ball, yeah.
So instead of having a ball, it's a little widget that stands in the bottom of the can that releases nitrogen as soon as you crack the can
Oh, okay.
open. So it releases the nitrogen and you get the same effect as
Yeah.
a Guinness without having the ball in there. It's super expensive, but it's getting kind of like in the middle of breweries that are trying out. Now it's getting a lot more affordable for them
yeah.
right now. Still, nitrogen.
Because initially it was only for stouts or like I guess maltier beers, but now people have slowly starting to change that. They
Yeah.
try with other styles such as IPAs, which I'm looking forward to trying one with IPA. I don't think I've ever
course.
had a nitro IPA.
One of my favorite good bar beers is the Saint Ambroise Blonde. Is it Pale Ale? Sorry.
Pale
In nitro.
Yeah.
Just because it brings out the maltiness of the beer. Because nitro is known to kill off a little bit of the hoppiness in the beer.
Yeah.
So it mellows down the hops, but brings out the maltiness. So yes, it does help the malty beers because what happens is when you do those hard pours, it's smaller bubbles. So nitrogen is really smaller, like significantly smaller than CO2. So it releases a lot of little bubbles, and when you do the hard pour, all the flavors comes out. So it brings out loads of aromas.
It's also the creaminess of the beer that's it's in those little tiny bubbles.
It really enhances the mouthfeel. Like Max beers right now.
It is creamy. It looks
super creamy.
Yeah,
and like there's no additive in the beer to create that. Yeah, a little bit of lactose because it's a milk stout, but still it just enhances everything in the experience out of it. But also it reacts in your tongue differently of CO2. CO2 kind of like expands in your tongue and opens up your I forgot the right name for it.
Tannins?
Is that it?
I'm not sure.
The thing that tastes stuff.
Taste buds?
Yeah, taste buds. It extends them a little bit and
makes
make
them
them a little
harsher.
bit more.
Like there's a bite.
Exactly, there's a bite.
CO2.
Nitro just smoothens a little bit everything everywhere. But it's like I said, it's just we're getting there. The technology is not available for everyone. Guinness, I guess, yes, they did create that. But now, like, they kind of, like, owned it for a while, and it's hard for other breweries to use that technology right now. But
slowly we'll see more of it.
Exactly.
And there's different ways. I mean, just the taps are a lot more affordable now these days.
Exactly.
The CO2 tap, the Nitro tap, I mean, and they're built different. If you play with them, you see the holes are smaller, and they do kind of, even if it's not plugged to Nitro, you'll have that creamy effect.
Exactly, and it's made for that. Like, the beer flows and creates that cascading effect in the beer. I wanted to point out something really interesting about it. Yes, it's the Nitro is a little bit heavier than CO2, so it tends to sink down in the bottom of the glass. So that's what's happening when you see the cascading effect.
That's why you see the bubbles
sinks down,
going
then it goes
down.
Up. I never knew that. Now I know it. It's crazy, and it's just a gas that really fascinates me, I think.
In beer, it's interesting.
It's
it really
cool.
is. It's another tool. Usually, you see beer as being 4 ingredients, but you forget about the CO2. You forget about the effect of air on beer. And in this case, you forget that there's nitro as well. You can get different flavors or different ways of pouring. Anyways, it's interesting.
It really gets into the drinking experience.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more beers with nitro and more styles with nitro.
That's what I wanted to point out because, yes, it kills off the hoppiness of the beer, but if you do get those nice juicy IPAs, New England IPAs, I think you could get something really nice out of it because hops are like through the roof. If you can lower that down with nitro, you get the creaminess and all that stuff. I think it could be just like
that's the other thing
delicious.
With Ash that in my research he wasn't a brewer initially. He was a guy of science. So for him, it was just problem solving. He approached the problem as a mathematician, not as a brewer or a passionate brewer to a problem, which is sometimes a good thing.
Yeah.
But after you have your passionate people come in and go, okay, so this is how we do things. Well, let's see how we can expand this and into other styles or into other kinds of beers or to enhance this flavor or enhance that flavor. So initially, when we wanted to do the nitro thing, I was like, I don't think there's much to say about this. But as always, in the Craft Beer 101, you end up researching for an hour and you go, wow, there's so much more to this.
We both have a full page of research of notes and all that stuff. And I even lost all my notes and just got back into it. And I just remembered all the interesting stuff that's out there. So
let us know in the comments below what subject you'd like to see in the future. If you like the nitro thing, well, what's your favorite nitro beer as well, or your nitro experience?
Exactly.
And we'll see you in the next video.
See you in the next video. And a little tip of the hat, those two breweries that we have right now that decide to just kick things off, a good high five to Left Hand for just
left-handed high five.
Left-handed high five. So left-handed high five to you guys, and we see you in the next video. That's cool. The left-hand high five. I like that.
Left-hand brewery, so I figured,
You crazy.